news channels, we're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
You're with GB News and the top story tonight. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is blaming what he calls barbaric terrorists for the attack on a hospital in Gaza City tonight that has left about 500 people dead. Israeli intelligence says it was caused by a failed rocket attack on Israel by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But officials in Gaza blame an Israeli airstrike. Thousands were seeking shelter at the hospital, and earlier tonight it was engulfed in flames, with survivors being pulled out and transferred to nearby hospitals while the dead were being laid out outside. The World Health Organization has condemned the explosion, calling it unprecedented. And the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, says the UK will work with allies to find out what happened at the hospital. The Israeli ambassador to the UK, Zippy Hotovelli, responded to news of the hospital attack earlier on GB News.
This is a war that Hamas started from this horrible massacre that happened in October 7th. I think everyone is still shocked in this country, in Israel and around the world, from the atrocities were exposed that Hamas did. And as we speak, there are still 199 Israelis, including children and Holocaust survivors, grandparents, that are kept hostage in Hamas hands. I want to check what happened, but I'm sure and I can guarantee you we never target civilians.
Well, we've been watching pictures in the last 15 minutes or so of the US President Joe Biden leaving for Israel on a key visit to the Middle East. And news from Jordan has come through after tonight's hospital strike that the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has cancelled his planned meeting with Joe Biden. Jordan's King Abdullah has cancelled the summit, which was going to take place in the Jordanian capital Amman and bring together President Biden with the Egyptian and Palestinian leaders of the region. Also in the news today, a British-Israeli teenager who's been missing since last weekend's terror attacks by Hamas has been confirmed dead today. 13-year-old Yahel and her mother Leanne were both killed when gunmen attacked their kibbutz last weekend. Her sister Noya and their father Eli are both still missing. Here, the Prime Minister has called for the immediate release of hostages taken by Hamas. Well, in news away from Israel, the return of Islamist terrorism poses a threat to all European nations, according to the French President Emmanuel Macron today. His comments came a day after 2 Swedish football fans were shot dead in a terrorist attack in Brussels just before Belgium's Euro 2024 qualifier against Sweden. Belgium's police say the suspect, who identified himself online after the attack as a member of Islamic State, was killed this morning. And here, the Scottish First Minister is pledging £300 million to cut NHS waiting lists in Scotland. Humza Yousaf told the SNP conference in Aberdeen it could reduce waiting lists by 100,000 patients by 2026. He also pledged to freeze council tax in Scotland next year. And the First Minister, who has family in Gaza, has commented on the Israeli-Hamas conflict, calling on the international community to set up a refugee programme for those fleeing from the Gaza Strip. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight to explore Wednesday's newspapers, we have 2 comedians straight from the Israeli embassy, Lewis Schaefer and Adam Bloom. Good evening, gentlemen.
I can't believe you said that.
Well, it's in the script. It's nothing to do with me.
I've got a Hebrew first name, a Hebrew second name, a Hebrew face, and a non-Jewish mother.
You're the Bloom is the half Hebrew in Ulysses. Did you ever read that, James Joyce's?
No, I know the name though.
Yeah, Bloom's Day as well, when on June 16th, the day it takes place, but he has a Protestant mother. So that could be you. I
have a German mother.
Yeah.
And you have a...
I do, that's right. This is why I collect them now, the half-breeds.
Right.
Yeah. You've got all your paraphernalia with you anyway, Lewis.
I've got tons of stuff coming up.
Is this all nicked from the embassy?
This is a gift from one of my loyal
from the
fans.
People of Norway.
Yeah, Loose 78.
Let's have a look at the front pages. We kick off with the Daily Mail. Hospital horror. Who's to blame? I think that question will be prevailing this evening. The Guardian, hundreds feared dead in Gaza hospital strike. Financial Times, Gaza Health Ministry says hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike in hospital. They seem to know who did it. The Eye, hundreds killed sheltering at hospital as Israel denies airstrike. The Daily Express, hundreds die in huge blast at Gaza hospital. And the Star, as ever, the invasion of the hairy-clawed nippers to distract us from the hideous news on the other pages. Those are your front pages. So obviously one story dominates. We're going to go to The Guardian, Lewis.
Hundreds feared dead in Gaza hospital strike. And, it's a horrible situation where a hospital has been blown up in northern Gaza, in Gaza City, and Hamas says that 500 died, and some people say 300 died, and they're blaming the Israelis. Of course, that might not be true.
Of course, I mean the Israelis deny it. Hamas are in no doubt.
Yeah.
If the Israelis didn't want to hit the hospital. It's a large target, and sometimes they hit what are superficially civilian targets but turn out to be arsenals of weapons and bomb storage and so on. But they're not claiming any of that. They're just saying, we didn't do this. It would be an extraordinarily flat-footed, wrong move to make this early in the engagement, wouldn't it? Really an unforced error.
Yeah, especially because Biden is coming, and it looks really bad. I mean, the thing about the Israelis, the Jews who are living there, is that they have two masters. One is they have the whole world is watching and being very judgmental. It doesn't seem like Israel can do any good. The fact that the Guardian, we get the newspapers, the articles printed out, and the essence of this whole story, which is that they're holding 199 Israelis in Gaza, including women and children, is on is all the way at the bottom,
way down,
all the way. Just a tremendous disrespect for it. You know, they've already decided what it is. So the Israelis, the Jews, can't do anything right.
What do you think, Adam?
Well, apparently 25% of Hamas's missiles don't reach their target, so it's completely possible it was an accident, and then they go, oh, it wasn't us, which is perfect propaganda, because if you make a mistake, you look stupid. If you turn your mistake into the other person's evil...
But do you think it's possible to... I mean, it's extraordinary how quickly people have come to a conclusion about it, and of course there's usually, you know, a certain amount of motivated reasoning, but eventually the truth is likely to come out. We have satellites tracking these missiles now. Hamas, apparently, one story goes that Hamas announced that a number of rockets were going to be launched from their side, and these rockets did not make their destination, indicating that it is conceivable that those crashed very early on. But, I mean, that would probably not warrant such a large explosion unless Hamas were also using the hospital as a store. But I mean, it's going to come out soon.
It is going to come out, but do you think people are going to believe it? No one, you know, you believe what you want to believe. What's that song? You know, people believe what they want to believe and they disregard the rest. So
it's true as well that in war, of course, the next thing comes along, doesn't it? And people don't always go back and acknowledge that they were wrong the first time. Adam, you have another story connecting with this one, of course, in the Telegraph.
Yes, well, I just want to say, we get these stories at 10 to 11, and I was very interested in the first story because it's so serious, so obviously I put my energy into that one. But Biden visits Israel as hundreds die in Gaza hospital. So he's popped over, which is very noble, and he's out there going, this has got to stop. I always think, like,
sorry to interrupt, is he going to Tel Aviv? He's not going to go to the front line, as it were? Or
as I said, I haven't read it yet.
You haven't read it, OK. well, let's assume that he's just going to go to the sort of...
But he's certainly in Israel, and sorry about that, but the thing is, as beautiful it is when someone shows their concern, because the best way you can show concern as a world leader is to go to the place, but it's not going to change anything by being there. It's almost like a superhero going, look, I'm bulletproof. And
well, also, I mean, I suppose he's demonstrating a certain amount of solidarity, more than he is with Hamas by any means. But nevertheless, I mean, money is obviously what they're going to be talking about, isn't it? And armaments and that sort of thing. I suppose that's the key, rather than just gestures.
Well, the interesting thing about the whole story about Biden visiting is, like, what side is Biden on? Generally, he's team world, but Israel is not team world. Israel is the last of the ethno-states. It's one language, one...
first, you might say.
Well, the first there, but whatever. It's the last European one that was created, and might be the first to end. And so... how does this all fit in? I'm not sure that I really...
It's interesting. I mean, I don't draw any conclusions from this one. I don't mean to be facetious, but it is known that Biden was, broadly speaking, sympathetic to the Irish Republican cause, which was always a cause for some sort of, unsettling hesitation about the British watching him sort of rise through the ranks.
Yeah.
Well, the fraternity between the Irish Republican cause and the Palestinian cause, if not specifically Hamas, was always also well established. Celtic Football Club that's the shirt you wear if you want to demonstrate support for Palestine. So there's a lot of, sometimes these kind of solidarity.
They fold in. But it's like Biden, who's become more and more like leftist team world, and the left supports Palestine. So him being in Israel is sort of going against his core audience in America.
There's another story on the Telegraph that you may have had a chance to have a look at, MI5.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Basically, there's this thing which I hadn't even heard of. It says the head of the MI5 has raised the specter of Iranian-backed terror attacks in the UK in the wake of the war in Israel, and they have a group of five called Five Eyes, that basically the English-speaking world, Canada, America, New Zealand, Australia. Do they speak English in Australia?
Yeah.
And, and here in Britain, I assume they speak English here in Britain, and they met. And the head of our MI5, which I always thought sounded like M15. It always looked like M15 to me. He said basically the Iranians who've been attacking other Iranians around the world are now going to probably, possibly, could be, maybe, possibly switch to harder targets at us.
Yeah.
Meaning.
You got that story at 10 to 11. How on earth did you have all those opinions and facts?
I've been grilling Lewis on this. He used to be like you, Adam. Come on and try and blag his way through it.
I met him in Melbourne in 1999 at a comedy festival.
This is not relevant.
I was surprised you could even read.
This is the trouble. The thing with Iran is they are kind of hedging their bets a little bit on the current issue as well, aren't they? There was not very long ago they were like trying to give the impression that if there was any kind of escalation from Israel, they would be forced to be drawn in, and now they've withdrawn.
Yeah.
It's very hard to read quite what... I mean, most people assume that the Hamas terror attack was ultimately sponsored by Iran because they're the country who would most benefit from total destabilisation.
And I think what Israel has done, and I'm not saying I'm for this, but Israel, and I'm not the first person to say this, is playing the crazy card like Nixon.
Yeah,
and he's saying, hey, we might blow up the hospital. You got to be careful about us.
Which is exactly what I thought about Donald Trump, incidentally, and have continued to gently raise the possibility that maybe his 4 years of peace wasn't a total coincidence.
Yeah.
But there we are. We have one more paper to have a quick look at, Adam. It's the Daily Star. What have we gone with?
This is the light story of the day.
Managed to absorb this.
Yes, I have. Let's make the most of this. Invasion of the hairy clawed nippers. So basically, there's some Chinese crabs that are very dangerous, and it says they're among the 100th worst invasive species according to the Natural History Museum. Obviously designed by scientists in China.
Yeah.
China.
Do you think this is like the crab version of COVID? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But let's be honest, it's just that they're a way of saying, let's just think about something fun.
Yeah.
Something else.
It's all a killer. An invasion. I think about 1 in 3 of their front pages are about some invasive species. It's either a killer hornet or bed bugs, of course, recently they had. Is it possible also that nippers sounds a bit like nipples? Are they playing on that?
I bet it's nipples the first time.
Yeah.
Also, put in the word invasion. If you want some light relief, find a tortoise that walked for a mile to find its house or something.
Yeah, well, the tortoise's daughter has then turns out to have been pulling some sort of scam with the proceeds. That is it for part 1. See you in part 2 with Ferguson's forecast, Brussels and Swedes, and real-life Terminators in the Ukraine. See you after the break.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, still here with Lewis Schaefer and Adam Bloom, so we'll continue with the stories. Lewis, we kick off with the Telegraph, and everyone's favourite evil scientist is also an evil economist.
Yeah, why should he be an economist? This is Neil Ferguson, and according to the Telegraph, lockdown scientist, which is him, knew days before advice released to lock everything down that would cause economic misery and hit
the poorest
hardest. And I will tell you this right now: it's not the scientists' business to decide if it's going to have economic impact, and it's not the economists' business whether the lockdowns were going to cause
we're going to soak up the transmission.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Why
you get the feeling the conversations they were having were not dissimilar to the ones we have. Everyone is like well out of their depth.
They shouldn't have had this discussion. Now, this guy Neil Ferguson, he basically said there was going to be 500,000 deaths. This is the end of the world. He was the one who wanted lockdown.
Yeah.
And then, during the midst of lockdown, he invited his girlfriend, who had 3 children and a husband, who lived probably in East Dulwich, where I'm from, and invited her to have sex in the middle, breaking all the rules. And then
snuck through the back door as well, through the French windows.
Is that how it
kind of like some terrible provincial drama, like staged M8-born thing.
So get ready for this. Get ready to contradict what I'm going to say. So Neil Ferguson, he was either lying to us, saying that it's not a problem, right? Because otherwise he wouldn't have invited this girl in, or he knew it was a problem and was risking the death of people by having sex with that woman.
Well, I'm not going to dispute it, but I do want to focus on this aspect of it.
You should dispute it, because
it sounds like they had a...
I think your job to dispute that.
Sounds like they had a...
to provide balance, aren't you?
Okay. I've been looking forward to this all week. I knew you'd be like
Calm down.
Isn't it? First of all, a scientist says there's a pandemic, you need to stay in. So everyone stays in, and the PM goes, no one told us that we're going to lose money by staying in. Of course you're going to lose money. They just said there's a pandemic, stay in. That's their job, right? We suggest you stay in. So else go, we're going to lose billions of pounds. Maybe some of us should go out.
But I
did Zoom gigs. I stayed in. It was great.
This was modelling the outcomes using his computer and his stochastic modelling techniques or whatever. And he was like, he is the guy who had modelled the previous 8 pandemics, including that swine flu and so on, saying we're all going to die. Nobody died. Nobody paid any attention to him. He was proved wrong again and again and again.
Yeah.
On this occasion, he says, well, our modelling suggests that if we don't lock down, there will be an absolute bloodbath, but it will create economic turmoil. I feel like this is the least of it, to be honest. The fact that he anticipated economic turmoil is like the least of the point is that his modelling had been proven wrong again and again and again, yet they still came back to it.
Well, one thing, okay, I agree with you. If he's proven wrong, that's bad. Yeah. But the fact that he had sex with that girl in the middle of the pandemic makes him, he should be put in jail for this.
Lewis, when was the last time you got laid?
Adam, we stay with the Telegraph and the recent horrific events in Brussels this time.
Yeah, this is obviously not funny at all. The Swedish PM calls for tougher border controls as gunman kills 2. So we all know about the guy at the football match in Brussels. He had spent some time in Sweden, so he had a vendetta against Sweden.
But something like that. So, that is what they say. He'd spent some time there and nothing happened to him bad there.
No, but I don't think he's welcome.
Came from.
I don't think he's welcome because he was. I think
he's psychotic by the
sound. Yeah, but he had it in for Sweden specifically. He went to Sweden. I don't think he was. I think he wasn't welcome. He was a legal immigrant. I'm pleased. I hope I got that right.
No, it wasn't. It's a failed asylum seeker, absolutely.
Yes, exactly. But so, yes, you know what? In a light-hearted way, if you open the borders, at least you've got no more angry people.
Well, I mean, you know what? There is a tiny grain. I wouldn't say of truth, but that is the way that some people think about it. That you create the friction, that you create the anger, because these people think that they're being kept out and denied access to the good stuff.
So when the Jehovah's Witnesses come to my door, I have to talk to them. No, you don't have to. That's totally ridiculous.
You know what? That's a dated analogy, because they just stand in the street with flies now.
Yeah. So I used to like the Jehovah's Witnesses. I would always find that a welcome interruption on a Wednesday afternoon. Nice chat, you know, nothing too heavy.
But nothing against the Jehovah's Witnesses. The fact is that he killed 3. We're in a state of war. There's a couple of wars going on. Team World is fighting Team Nationhood, and it looks like
we know now, don't we?
We're in a religious war.
We know at this point. I mean, we saw the size of the march. You know, pro-Palestinian, not pro-Hamas, but pro-Palestinian march in London. We know the number of people, even if a small percentage of those people are in favour of Hamas using the extreme terror they did.
Yeah.
It's not like a handful of people that you can deport or round up or whatever. You know, this is a sizable part of the demographic of the Western Europe.
And a country like Sweden, I think, is 10 or 20% has an immigrant population that's basically transformed the entire country into anger and hostility.
So I think it's got to be a chemical solution. But anyway, Lewis, The Guardian have a predictably humorless response to Greta Thunberg being arrested.
Yeah, this is The Guardian. She's arrested in a London oil summit protest, the Energy Intelligence Forum, which brings together fossil fuel executives and government ministers. She came in. First of all, there's no such thing as fossil fuels.
Yeah, let's not go down there.
Well, we won't go down there, but I think people need to know it's not fossil fuels. It's just hydrocarbons, and the whole universe is awash.
I said let's not go down there.
Okay, sorry.
I think his ex-wife ran off with a fossil.
But they're calling it the Oscars of oil, which just sounds like a really pathetic. What does that even mean?
It means they all get together and they all chat amongst themselves. But I mean, how did she get to London? Did she walk? I mean, she could walk because she's Greta Thunberg. She could walk on water. She's like a god.
What do you think, Adam? She should be allowed to protest?
Adam told me that joke. Adam gave me that joke.
You know what's funny, Lewis, right?
Yeah, go on.
I just said it in passing, right? And he went, but that's your joke. I said, you can use it. And now you've not only ruined all magic. Just take the joke. Take the joke.
It was a fine joke.
Yeah. It would have been even better if he could have
Can we try and focus on the news story rather than the mechanics of humour?
Well, I'm about to improvise a line that Lewis didn't give me.
Go on.
Of course you'd like to. Everyone's allowed to protest. I'd like to know how she got there. Lewis made a good point.
Yeah.
If you flew over in a private jet, then shame on you. Look, she reads into stuff. She knows the subject more than we do right now. So if she's there protesting, there probably is some death involved in the byproduct of what they're doing there. She doesn't protest for the sake of it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she's protesting the whole of the oil industry, isn't she? She's protesting the idea that these people make a fortune out of heating up the planet. This is her point of view. I'm not saying it's correct. And then enjoy, you know, nice big jollies in fancy London hotels. She doesn't like the idea of them doing that.
She doesn't like the idea that we're warm, that we have food, that we have cars and can go places. She doesn't like anything. She's miserable because she's a vegan, and this is what happens when you're a vegan. Plant-based diets give you psychosis.
Okay. When she's old enough to drive, I hope she has an electric car.
She is. She's 20 years old.
Oh, is she?
Yes, she's old now.
It's still, even then, that's like, obviously not good. That's just kind of shoving the pollution to one side, isn't it? Adam, on to the metro now, and this seems like a blatant attempt by Ukraine to wrest our attention back from the Middle East.
Well, as horrific as the outcome of this is, it's quite an interesting story. Killer robots that don't need humans to operate have entered the battlefield. So the Ukrainians have got, basically, they're drones, but they're drones that do everything on their own. Now, if your enemy ends up having that, eventually you just got a load of robots fighting, and everyone sits back, gets popcorn, and probably ends up becoming friends and enjoying watching the fight and forgetting.
Which is what we've always asked for, isn't it? Well, we used to have, like, 2 champions would go forward, you know, and battle like Achilles and Hector or something, and you would have that kind of fight, and everyone else would just go, come on, Achilles, you know.
But it's
back to that again.
It's very Terminator as well, isn't it? I think if only we could convince Putin to change his name by default to Sarah Connors.
Do you think they're going to be having, like, kind of, well, there's not even a joystick, so presumably the thing is, like, what is it, just uploads?
I think what it is, it's programmed to recognize a tank.
Right.
And so if they go across, they're in a particular quadrant. If there's a tank, they fire the tank. They don't have to wait for their thing. But it's like those squares, those 6 squares in Capture, whatever it is, where you check, is like find the bus. It'll be like find the tank.
Do you think all those things where we've been doing capture to prove we're not robots have actually been like training killer robots?
It could actually be doing that.
Could be using that all this time.
Or it could just be as ineffective. I always find they got to do it 2 or 3 times because you think it's like, that's not a bus.
Well, they can take that risk, I guess. Lewis, this could be very easily the most blackpilling story of the decade, rumbling on in the Mail.
Blackpilling?
Yeah.
It's interesting. You don't use that term.
Do you not think it's kind of like slightly depressing, like everything is broken, nothing works?
You know what, since COVID, I think everything is broken. So this is, I think, is just funny. And it's a very English story because Captain Tom's daughter insists an authorized spa pool at their £1.2 million house could be used for rehab sessions for elderly people who live nearby as their family battles order to demolish it. These people are the scummiest people.
We've got some images of it, apparently. There they are. Well,
because they made it in the shape of a C, and she only had permission to make it in the shape of an L.
So it's the whole thing. That whole sea is a spa.
That's the whole thing. And she got 800,000. I think they must have had money to begin with. Yeah. But she had 800,000. She got 800,000 pounds from Uncle Tom's. Uncle Tom.
Uncle Tom. It's apparently not Uncle Tom. That's a different thing entirely. Yeah.
Is that her? But I think
Captain Tom.
I think it is the most British story because one thing I find, and I'm an American, and we people are the greatest people in the world, based on. But the English people, every English person has like a scam, a hidden scam. They come across as being so good people, but meanwhile they're working on. And this woman should be like him. If I were her, I would just go straight to Australia.
Say the bigger the front, the bigger the back. That's a saying.
Is that an English saying?
I can't remember where I heard it, but it's this kind of thing. Like the more elaborate the projection of virtue, the more likely that there's something really. Having said that, we should emphasise the old fellow himself. I don't think was up to anything, was it? He thought he was doing well.
No, and then look what happened. They took him on holiday a month before he died, and they basically.
Adam,
if Captain Tom knew about this, I was going to say turn in his grave, but he'd probably swim in it and have a spa. Have a massage and a glass of champagne.
To generate enough electricity for Greta's new car.
Can I say, it is a bit suspicious having all those facilities for elderly people in your house. Imagine like during Live Aid, if Bob Geldof raided his mansion, it's just full of like turkeys and caviar. I go, no. If the Ethiopians could come over, they're welcome to some.
Remember Mark Thomas made a programme years ago where he found out that loads of like company HQs had great oil paintings, great masters, oil paintings worth millions of pounds, but they managed to not pay tax. They were a tax dodge because of the public could go and see them. And so they were sort of held. So he just demanded to keep going in and seeing these paintings.
Isn't that like the royal family, you know? Yeah. It's like we've got access.
It's the only reason I send dick pics.
That's it for part 2. Coming up, we have flag-waving jihadis, beer-swilling MPs and chippy northerners. It's all straight from Central Casting. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
the Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So let's kick off the third section, Adam, with the Telegraph and waving flags. Not illegal yet. Flagstones, maybe.
This is a very interesting situation, actually. Pro-Palestine protesters waving jihadist flags did not commit offence, said the police. This is such a grey area because these flags have 2 meanings. And then if ISIS use it for one thing, but it also has a religious meaning as well, you can say, no, I mean the religious one. Now, if you didn't know it had 2 meanings, then that's an innocent thing. If you did know it had 2 meanings, then you're on very thin ice doing that. Like, you know, there's the swastika backwards, it was a Hindu symbol. You had a transparent flag waving that around, and you're a German. You no, only look at that side. Only look at that, so not that side.
It's a black flag with some Arabic script on, essentially. Is that right? I think.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, let's be absolutely, upfront about this. For the vast majority of people in the crowd, it means nothing. It doesn't have 1 meaning or 2 meanings. It just looks like an Arabic.
We're back to the crowd. We're back to the bomb hitting the hospital. It just depends how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the good in people, and I'd like to think those people were going, this is a religious thing.
Yeah.
You kind of should do your research on that kind of thing if you're going to go out in public, given that people are beheading babies.
Yeah. So I don't mean the people waving the flags. I just mean if you walk in the street and you saw swastikas being waved, there's no plausible explanation now that reverts to the Hindu use of the swastika.
No, that's obviously not ambiguous. I was exaggerating to make an example.
I understand the point. So, but these are flags with Arabic script on. And I think it is scripture, right? But it's a particular passage from the Quran which is also.
Yes.
Yeah.
It means good. It means good. If I had to go innocent or guilty, I'd say innocent just because human nature. I don't think there are that many people in England who would go out doing that. No. There aren't enough of them. It'd be a very small minority. Unfortunate mistake. And let's forgive and forget.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, that big march where a lot of this stuff kicked off, people were expecting worse than happened, I think. There were some outrages, there were some, disgusting and some alarming, but a lot of people with camera phones there. That kind of, footage now is not necessarily representative. But we have moved into an era, I think, haven't we, where it's not necessarily going to be possible to rely on old-fashioned English common sense to mediate a feud of this kind. What do you think?
I disagree with Adam. You think the worst.
Yeah.
It's just the worst.
If somebody's waving a flag, you assume they're doing so in order to...
You know what? The fact that they jump to support Palestine, who could use some support, but at the same time, what they did was beyond support. You don't support them at this moment.
These are not neutral people, are they? These are supporters of the other side already. They're well established.
Well, they should hold their head in shame a little bit, but they're not going to, and that's what the world is. It's a horrible, horrible world.
I've got to say, that he does make a good point. If the people who you're involved with religiously, historically, are doing something horrific, you've got to be very... I mean, white flags would have been nice, right?
Yeah.
So I think you've got a point, Lewis. But, you know, his wife ran off with a flag.
Times now, Lewis. This story seems to come up with leaden regularity. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing this on headliners in the last 2 years.
Yeah, this is drinking culture fuels abusive behaviour by MPs. This is in the Times. There's a watchdog, which is the annual report of the watchdog. The watchdog is called the Independent Complaints and Grievances Scheme, ICGS. It was set up in 2018, and they said they listed a lot of bad behavior, mostly from men, touching, feeling, saying, and it says
rouse as well, or is it more sexual harassment and
sexual harassment, including by one of my local MPs, Neil Coyle. I don't know what he did exactly, but they blame it on alcohol, which is a perfect reason to blame anything.
It is a drinking culture in the House of Commons. It always has been.
We're in England. These people, English people, love to drink.
There is an argument for overhauling the whole culture, but I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of it probably is where also the where a little bit of gossip gets exchanged, where maybe a few guards get let down in what might be quite a functional way for a good democracy.
It's also, I'll tell you what it is. It's also these MPs are somebody within a certain context, and so it's like open season for Me Tooing successful men. Okay. You know, they're all successful men. They all have a bit of power. They all have a little bit of cachet that, you know, you want to bring the guy down. There's reasons for bringing people down.
What do you think, Adam?
I drink 7 days a week.
Do you?
I look 10 years younger than I am. 52. I have a body of an 18-year-old. And you know what? I drink 7 days a week, but I exercise and I eat well. So what they should ban is... I drink 7 days a week.
Do you? Yeah.
I think nothing of drinking half a bottle of whiskey in the evening just after a gig, winding down. Really? But I get up in the morning, I run, I eat healthily. Yeah. The problem isn't just the booze, it's their lifestyle, because they look a mess. Yeah. They look a mess. And by the way, when you said harass, you stuttered and you said you said harassment. You went harassment.
I didn't say that.
You did.
You're absolutely right, though. There is a culture not just of drinking, but of generally not looking after yourself in the House of Commons. I think that is
because they're middle-aged English people. But can you just speak out for a second and denounce what he said? Because alcohol kills. Alcohol is fermented sugar, and when you ferment sugar, it tells the body something bad is happening. This crazy guy has to eat fermented sugar. There must be something bad going on in his life.
I'm just saying, if you eat unhealthy food and don't exercise and don't drink alcohol, you're going to end up a mess as well.
There is also you say you think nothing of drinking half a bottle of whiskey after a gig, which I think is quite a lot of booze.
I'm not saying everyone should drink alcohol.
Do you drink that with other people? Would you drink that much in a bar, like with other people who might be your either subordinates or opponents across the floor, that sort of thing?
No, because in a bar situation, there's the time it takes to get the drink. You don't top up.
But also just generally losing your self-control. I mean, part of the reason that people drink is order to lower their inhibitions, isn't it? But if they get lowered too far and you're drinking with people... I mean, the course of this country was changed irrevocably by a drunken punch thrown by an MP, I think his name was Eric Joyce, a few years ago, which led pretty much directly to Brexit.
No, I would say drinking at home is... It's safer drinking more at home because you're with the people specifically you want to be with.
I agree.
Right, so you're not going to get into an argument with someone in your own home.
That's very true. Yeah. Adam, we have The Independent now. You might think Kevin Spacey made quite an impact last night. I couldn't possibly comment.
It says here that Lewis Schaefer needs to eat healthier and drink more. Kevin Spacey met with a standing ovation at Oxford University lecture on cancel culture. This was his first performance since he was been acquitted, that's key word here, of sexual assault. He performed, it's called Timon of Athens, a Shakespeare play. He did a 5-minute bit from it. What I think's most dangerous is if you get a standing ovation when you arrive, then you perform for a bit and you don't get a standing ovation coming off. That means he's not as good an actor. He is as a non-sexual deviant.
As he's just a celebrity, but he did get one coming off as well, didn't he?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, I think he got it for his performance. He was brought on by Douglas Murray, incidentally. It's on YouTube if you want to watch it. I've been to one of these scrutiny lectures in previous years. They're quite good. But this is on the subject of not just of cancel culture as we understand it. Apparently, the Timon of Athens thing is somebody who had money and was able to be a wealthy patron of the arts, and as soon as he ran out of his money, the arts wanted nothing more to do with him. It's a bit more about you know, betrayal and backstabbers of that kind. Yeah, it was a particular passage that was relevant, but not necessarily exactly what we think of as cancel culture. Much more like you're only popular if you buy favours, then when the money runs out, the favours run out.
By that logic, shouldn't Russell Brand be playing Jimmy Savile?
I wrote a piece for Spiked recently that explored the comparison.
Can I just make that I knew him before he was well known. I don't know him now, and I just want to take that back. Russell. Okay. I want to take that back because that was a joke that I didn't have any meaning behind. Yeah, that's it.
I think they're saying they might have a bit of video. Are you telling me? Yeah. Yes.
Beast, toad, rogue. I am sick of this false world and will love it not!
Wow, powerful stuff there. Yeah. You wouldn't even have known he was acting, would you? Lewis, The Guardian now. Bolton University's Vice-Chancellor seems to suggest you shouldn't go there.
No, well, he did not go there by that name. It says Bolton graduates miss out on top jobs because of prejudice, says Vice-Chancellor. And this guy, George Holmes, basically he's the Rodney Dangerfield of executives. He gets no respect. He gets no respect, and he thinks, I'm Bolton. Nobody likes Bolton, but why don't they? And we're one of the, according to The Guardian, is one of the top 30 universities in the country.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Yeah. It is, because I must admit, I didn't know that it was.
And they have branches in London, Greece, and Dubai, so they're doing really well, Bolton. Yeah. And then they don't want to be called Bolton anymore because people don't know where Bolton is. So he's been lying. He's been telling people it's in Manchester, which maybe it is in Manchester. I don't know.
It's a suburb of. It's kind of a suburb. Well, it's a satellite town of.
It reminds me, I think, geographically of the way Newark is in the New York City area.
Yeah.
It's a separate little city, but it gets no respect. Anyway, he wants to change the name to the University of Greater Manchester.
There is, I mean, there has been a long history of prejudice and, you know, quite cruel jokes about the former polytechnics that become universities, and they don't, these prejudices don't always keep pace with the reality. I know I live in Brighton, and we've got two universities there, the University of Brighton and of Sussex. And these have both come up very hard, you know, and if you look at the table rankings now, they're considered to be the first-rate universities, but a lot of people still think of them as places where people go because they want to hang out on the beach and get stoned, you know, and it is hard to shake these things off. Adam?
I'm just watching you two, and I've known you both for a very long time, and I've just realised you are so different. It's like if you're Chuck D, he's Flavor Flav.
Oh, that's a very useful contribution. Though, thank you. Part 3 coming up. We have Panic on the Streets of Doncaster, Ancient Scrolls in Pompeii, and why you should look after your tonsils. See you in a couple of minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners one last time. Lewis, the Metro have possibly the best mistaken identity story since the EDL thought Brighton Pavilion was a mosque.
Well, not really. I think this is a legitimate story. Woman slams selfish paragliders who made her thinking Hamas were invading Doncaster, and but it wasn't quite Doncaster. It's the village of Armthorpe, which I don't know. Have you ever been there?
No.
I've never been there. I should have done a bit of Google. But according to the Doncaster Free Press, this woman saw paragliders flying above her town and thought the worst. And I remember when 9/11 happened, and we would look up to the sky. A lot of the young audience may not remember this. They might not have been here then. But you would look up. For like years afterwards, you'd look up at the sky if there was a plane rumbling by, and you think...
Right. I remember that for a week or so, but that was planes. Paragliders were being used in quite a specific context by Hamas to get over the wall, over the fences.
Yeah, but I think that people know this.
Yeah.
I don't think Doncaster's known for its Jewish community.
Or indeed it's like
community,
jihadist community.
Or a sense of community.
Yeah. Anyway.
But not only Jews are at danger right now.
Do you think it was tasteless to go up in a paraglider in the immediate aftermath? Maybe it was, though.
If it was a cruel joke, that's horrible.
Yeah.
If it was innocent, the woman's been paranoid and it's all on her.
We've had a laugh at it.
I don't think people were going to attack Doncaster.
No. Or indeed do it as a cruel joke.
It's probably the only good thing about living in Doncaster is you're not going to get attacked.
Yeah, but because you're attacked by living there.
So there's a lot. We probably have a significant audience in Doncaster.
Sorry.
Yeah, probably. That's where a lot of people are.
Yeah.
But do you think we should stop using paragliders because of what happened in Israel?
I would say we should stop using machetes. Almost like I would be quite happy to see those banned outright. But paragliders, I think, can still be regarded as a legitimate source of recreational activity.
I think from 2001 to 2004 in New York it should be illegal to fly a plane into a building.
Yeah, I would imagine that's still probably on the statute books. Daily Star now, Adam. AI is translating ancient scrolls, though not the Dead Sea.
So I'm not a fan of AI as a creative person. I think it's it's a cop out, and I don't like the idea. But this is putting it to good because the first word of an ancient scroll has been unearthed from ashes of Pompeii and is decoded by AI. They spent £575,000 to get one word, right? That's an expensive word count, right? I find this very exciting because it's so long ago. It's 79 AD, and the word they worked out is porphyrus, which is Greek for purple.
Can I do that 575? I can't work out whether that's like a prize that's being offered by the Vesuvius Challenge or something, but I'm not quite sure.
It says price of, not prize. It says price of.
Yeah, OK.
By the way, just one thing. Maybe purple, first word, maybe it said purple, 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 pink, 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 and it was the world's first dick pic.
Yeah.
And I said that because Lewis told me I couldn't say that, and the producer came in the interval and said I could. So that's for you.
You can't do it twice, though.
You can't do it twice.
I think the thing about the artificial intelligence solving the scroll, that we want to know is how do we know it's got it right? If it's got some secret method, it could just be very easily making it up, couldn't it? But it needs to show us it's working, surely.
Well, I mean, especially it's only one word. It's not exactly a sentence. They were supposed to come up with four. Basically, there was a prize of $700,000, which is £575,000. So they didn't spend that money, but. I mean, you can't trust AI. If you Google, I put Louis Schaefer. Is Louis Schaefer a comedian?
Ask Twitter.
And they said yes. AI said yes.
Oh, AI said yes.
You know what? The first word's purple. I just realised maybe it's a song lyric that Prince nicked off them.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. That would go back an awful long way. That would be the earliest example of plagiarism. Lewis, The Guardian. Anyone thinking they can keep a seaweed habit safe from paleontologists has got another thing coming.
Yeah, well, this is the pro-vegan, pro-vegetarian, plant-based Guardian. Seaweed was a common food in Europe for thousands of years, researchers find.
Right.
I mean, and it's when are these thousands of years? From 6400 BC to the 12th century, basically about 7,000 years. But that's a drop in the bucket.
Do you find this is challenging to your notion that we're naturally carnivores?
We are naturally carnivores. The reason we were living near the sea was because that's where the food was. It was the easiest food to get. We got seashells with oysters or whatever, starfish, and that's where we ate them. And the fact is...
I think the seaweed was just probably wrapped around some of the more high protein...
And starfish? Did we eat starfish?
No, I just had thought...
I like the idea of starfish at Christmas because everyone gets a leg.
Everyone gets very nice, very good.
You're welcome. And Lewis did not give me that one.
No.
But at the end of the day, it's just trying to say, look, you know, plant-based diets are good. We didn't eat plant-based
diets. You think
diets.
this is what it is? It's propaganda.
It's plant-based propaganda.
They like it in Japan, right? You go to Japanese restaurants, you get crispy seaweed, but it never feels like it's very filling. I don't think you could get very far on it.
Well, I actually Googled that, and they said people in Japan eat it as a tiny little side dish, or maybe they have it sprinkled in the whatchamacallit, soup, that miso soup. Yeah. They don't eat very much.
No.
Much of it.
It's a garnish. It does contain iodine, though, which is good for IQ.
Or it can contain too much iodine. And number two, it's loaded with anti-nutrients. It's actually proper bad for you if you eat too much of it. You can Google it. Google seaweed and anti-nutrients.
I've been to a restaurant before, and they've sold you seaweed.
Yeah.
And it's actually cabbage. So actually, there's fake seaweed out there.
You check your teeth when you get home and you realise you've been done.
I just don't understand how you could be selling something that's not what you're saying it is.
Unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
What a world we live in. Adam, male now, and it turns out tonsils might not be purely ornamental after all.
Yes, so it says here, having your tonsils removed could raise your risk of arthritis in old age. And apparently, it's 2/3 more chance. I mean, they're also saying that being a second child means you're more likely to have it. There's all these weird
correlations.
I mean, are you going to say you need your tonsils removed? Yeah. I can't have my child's tonsils removed because in 70 years' time they might have a bad back.
Ankylosing spondylitis, which our friend Lee Hurst has got, of course. It's not a funny thing at all. It's very painful.
Is that right?
Yeah, but lovely tonsils.
Yeah.
No, this is one of the most pointless stories that we've read ever. Because it says it's 1/3 more chance of having arthritis in old age. Basically, this is epidemiology. This is the worst form of science, the lowest level, where they take a big...
It's worse than climate science.
Climate science isn't science.
Oh, OK.
OK, this is maybe considered science, where they take a group of people and then they say, what's their more likeliness? But they don't show what there's least likeliness. And at the end of the day, 36% more likely to...
You can't convict, can you?
No, not on 36%.
Finally, Lewis, you've got about a minute to talk about the key to great sex. It's gremlins, apparently, in the mail.
It's not gremlins, it's ghrelin. It's ghrelin, and you should always eat before having sex.
No. The women used to eat before having sex, so they've got an excuse for throwing up afterwards.
Yeah. I always eat before I have sex because sometimes it's years while waiting. I'm going to starve to death unless I eat.
You eat before sex because it's included in the bill.
But why don't you listen to that? That was a good joke. I always eat before sex because the next time I have sex could be next year.
Yeah, very good.
I think that's a joke. The reason I gave you credit for the joke is I don't want the audience to think, oh, you're going to hear jokes when Louis Schaefer is here. That's for Simon
Do you think, though, is there any suggestion that this is actually may improve sex or just makes you happier with your sex?
Well, it says, can I just interrupt now? This is even worse than the study before. It says that people who have eat before sex have a 2% more likeliness of enjoying themselves. 2% is statistic.
All men eat before sex. It's a little blue pill when no one's looking.
Very good. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. The Daily Mail, hospital horror. Who's to blame? That still remains the big question. The Guardian, hundreds feared dead in Gaza hospital strike. Financial Times, Gaza Health Ministry says hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike in hospital. They may be eating those words. The Eye, hundreds killed sheltering at hospital as Israel denies airstrike. The Daily Express, hundreds die in huge blast at Gaza hospital. And the Star, invasion of the hairy clawed nippers. They seem to be the only ones certainly not responsible. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Lewis Schaefer and Adam Bloom. Headliners will be back tomorrow with Nick Dixon. Will be joined by Leo Kearse and Cressida Wetton. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you and good night.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.